Hey everybody, what's going on? Juan here, welcome back to the channel, and for this video I want to talk about something that I keep putting off, and it's got to stop because it's 2018. We're already a couple of months into the new year, and the gaming backlog, it's got to get cut down, man. A couple of videos ago, you saw me make a video about Bad Boys Miami Takedown, and it's a game that I own on PlayStation 2, and I hadn't played it, so I did, and it was a pretty traumatizing experience. So I felt the need to balance things out a little bit, if you will, and go from a bad game to a pretty good game. And this actually reminded me of a game that I've been putting off for quite a while, and that is Spec Ops: The Line. This game originally came out in 2012 with high reception, especially, with the story. People said that it was one of the best stories in that year. Technically a hidden gem, I guess, if you will, or an underrated title, because even though those that played it loved it, not a lot of people exactly played it. So with that being said, I felt the need that, given the fact that this game took 7 hours or less to beat, with the story mode, as somebody that has the tendency to not beat a lot of video games, considering that this is, short and it's like Gears of War, which is a game that I love, I gotta play it. And if the question is, did I love my time playing Spec Ops: The Line? The answer is yes. Holy crap, people, you gotta play this game. So here's me talking about my incredible experience with Spec Ops: The Line. I had really high expectations going into Spec Ops: The Line. It's been in my Steam collection for about 3 years, and every time I was about to finally play it, something else came up or I just plain forgot about it. Partially, I think it was due to the name. It reminded me of the budget titles on the PS1 of the same name, so I guess it was guilty by association. What finally motivated me to try it out is that I needed to play a nice linear game. Everything is open world or game as a service nowadays, so I was excited to play a game that was made to be played in a specific sequence. The footage you see in this video was recorded as I was playing, and there's also clips from my over 3-hour stream I did through Press Pause TV. And don't worry about spoilers regarding the story, because what I'll do is I'll make sure to cover that in this video, but I'm going to move it to the very end of it. So this gives you a chance to pause the video just before it concludes. You can play the game, you can enjoy the story, you can come back, and then we can have that conversation. Or if you don't care about it, just watch the entire thing right now and enjoy the video. First, let's get the obvious out of the way. This game is directly inspired by Gears of War in both gameplay and story. The difference is that this is a much more real-feeling world that isn't nearly as over-the-top as Epic series, so don't expect any chainsaws in this one. This is a third-person cover shooter that doesn't feel second-rate in any way whatsoever. The guns are responsive, there's plenty of cover, decent gun variety, and challenges even at a normal difficulty, and that's not just because I tend to get crazy and end up dying. Now, I do wish there were more options on the melee side of things, as you can really only do a basic smash attack or finish off your opponents with a cool animation when they're on the ground, but it's by no means a deal breaker. Assault rifles were my weapon of choice, so you need to be surprisingly conservative with your ammo, as you can quickly run out. Luckily, you can't pick up your opponent's weapons off the floor, so there's always a plan B or C. My favorite thing about the weapons is that this is above everything a game. By that, I mean that it throws out the logic out the window when necessary. The game does have parts where you have unlimited ammo, so you can just blow everything up the way that you want. And I feel like more games need to embrace this balance of challenging and rewarding experiences. I did run into a couple of issues where the character kept running trying to find cover even when I wasn't holding the run button, but it wasn't anything too bad. In Spec Ops, you play as Martin Walker, the leader of a squad that arrived in Dubai with the hopes of being able to rescue any remaining survivors. He's joined in this traumatic journey by Adam Zalugo, and the trio goes through a lot together, and I mean a lot. The premise of the story is simple, and that's what I loved about it. The real interesting story is how the team reacts to the situations surrounding them, the stress of making tough decisions in the battlefield, and keeping their cool as things get heated. What really sold me on the characters had to be the voiceover.
At least I'm doing my job. You're the one who's fine, just sitting back, waiting for things to themselves. You think I like watching these people die, huh? You think I won't carry this shit to my grave? Stand down! Both of you! Stand the down! The is wrong with you two? We're in the middle of a war zone, and you're fighting in the dirt like a couple of goddamn kids!
It's really easy to go down the cheesy route with a group like this, but the emotions through the words they share keeps you glued to the screen during cutscenes and gameplay. Like Gears, you'll find yourself being able to move around as the characters talk to each other, so you're never letting go of the controller for too long. Cutscenes last between 2 to 5 minutes on average, and that's the perfect length for me. They let you know what's going on, why you should care, and then it's time to get back to the action. You also have a couple of events where you have to make tough decisions, and I'll say that with Spec Ops The Line, this is one of the few games where I've actually had to take a deep breath before I make one of these decisions, because they're not the traditional good guy, bad guy decisions. Most of them kind of make you feel dirty. As a matter of fact, this whole game makes you feel dirty thanks to its story. There's not a defined good person in a war. There's blood, death, and agony all over the place, and you are right in the middle of it. The fact that Spec Ops The Line takes about 6 to 7 hours to complete means you're given just enough time to care about what you're doing and not sticking around long enough to get bored about what's happening. With Spec Ops The Line, this may be the best story in a third-person shooter than I've ever played with any other title. And honestly, going in, I did not think that my expectations could be met, because I read the reviews and I was like, can this really live up to expectations? And they were far exceeded. So I mentioned earlier that you're a trio, you go in here and your job is to try to rescue any remaining civilians or survivors, if you will. But you have somebody talking to you along the way, telling you, hey, you got to do this, you got to do that. And not all of those actions are exactly ethical or right by the standards of what your character is supposed to be there for. Even your teammates, Adam Zaluga, tell you like, hey, do we really got to do this? But your character, the protagonist, he's so dedicated to doing whatever he is told that he basically sells himself on the idea like, hey, we got to kill this person. Maybe it's not our enemy, but they're intruding along the way, or we got to make this decision, so I guess I got to kill this person, even if they haven't really done anything against me. And at first, your teammates are like, whatever, you're just doing your job. But eventually, they try to basically stop you and ask you, like, what is wrong with you, man? Now, I'm about to get into spoiler territory, but as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I'm going to move this conversation to the tail end of the video, because the story, man, and the moments that happen, and I talked about how much I love the gameplay and the story, but I do want to point out there are a couple of things that Spec Ops could have improved on. Although the controls feel responsive and the shooting is great, the fact that this is a real world, if you will, means the enemies aren't as memorable or as unique as they could be. And because this relies so much on cover shooting, it can feel repetitive, especially if you plan on beating it in 1 or 2 sittings. I also encountered a couple of glitches where the game wouldn't trigger a sequence that was supposed to happen, so I had to close it and try again. And this happened to me during a very epic moment in the game where I was boarding a plane and the teammate was supposed to follow me, except he didn't. He was kind of just standing there, and that's when I had the harsh realization that none of this is real, that that's not really my teammate, that's just an AI program to do what he was told, except even that, he could not do very well. And the soundtrack of a video game is essential to me, as it can deliver that final punch needed to deliver something incredible, and it felt like an afterthought here in Spec Ops The Line. It's filled with generic rock that felt like it was lifted out of a royalty-free music library. Aside from those things, Spec Ops The Line is the prime example of a short game done right. Great story, great gameplay, memorable moments, and it has an ending that leaves you thinking about the entire journey. What more could you ask for? So that was my experience with Spec Ops The Line. Remember, you can get this game for multiple consoles for super cheap. I played the PC version of this, and don't forget my spoiler portion of the review is going to be right to the tail end of this video, so I'm not going to waste too much of your time with the closing stuff. Remember, folks, that if you do like this video, you want to support the channel, you can do so with a huge thumbs up, subscribe, hit that notifications button, let me know what you think about anything that I'm doing. Whether you have suggestions, you can also leave those in the comment section of the video. And as the story progresses, you do lose one of your teammates, and that's when the character just completely loses it. He becomes violent, not just, with the gun, but with the way that he does it. He starts killing people and smashing their heads unnecessarily, to the point where the other guy's going like, dude, you're changing. He starts hallucinating, he starts justifying his own actions. And there's one mission that, for the very first time maybe in a video game, after I did what I was told that I had to do, I legitimately just let go of the mouse and keyboard and just looked at my screen, because I was like, did I really do that in the game? And I kind of love that, in the sense that very few games dare go that route of making you feel so bad you're questioning your decisions. And, not your real life decisions, but the decisions of the character. And this is what really sells Spec Ops The Line for me, because when you strip it down to its very core, this is a generic third-person cover shooter, right? With very good mechanics, with a good story, but it's the actions, it is the acting, it is the storytelling. It all comes together so magnificently well that when you get to the very end of the game, you get to something that I was very suspicious about. You know, I was always thinking to myself, is he just making this up? Is he just imagining the entire thing? You get to the scene at the end of the game where you're supposed to face off against the person that's been instructing you to commit these horrific actions. Lo and behold, that person is already dead, which means that the protagonist, Martin, he's the one that's committed all these actions, and he's the one that's convinced himself to kill all the people that did not need to be killed. And then the game takes it one step further and actually has you deciding, because all of a sudden the ghost of the person that you were always blaming, he comes up to you and tries to speak the truth, like, hey, what if you like to do what you did? You know, you are responsible for your own actions. And all of a sudden the character pulls out a gun, and that's when you figure out you can move the mouse. You can actually decide whether you shoot the ghost or the image of the person that you've been blaming, or you can put the gun to yourself and admit that you're responsible and that, well, maybe you just shouldn't live anymore. The cool thing about the game is that it saves just before this cutscene happens, so you can watch either option unfold, because you got to do that. You know, I even did this on stream on Press Pause TV, and everybody was like, man, we got to see the alternate ending, because what happens, right? So in ending A, he shoots the ghost and he's like, man, you know, I'm in charge now, like this is what's gonna happen. In option B, he takes his own life. But even in the other one where he does make it out alive, you're not done. You can actually still play just a little bit more, and you have even more options after the credits where he's being rescued. You know, you can either choose to just go about your life and pretend like you were just the victim and you were just doing what was told. You can actually, you know, go rogue and try to shoot the people trying to save you. Or you can just kind of like run around and they'll be like, okay, this guy is mental, he needs some help. Think about that. You have two endings, but there are technically between 2 to 3 endings within one of those endings. It's endingception. This is ending the video game. So there's not just one line, there's not just one Spec Ops line, there's multiple lines, really. And now that you've seen all of that, all I gotta say is thank you for watching and supporting, and never forget, folks, that the epic journey continues. Thanks for watching, gang. Take care. That conclusion, man, traumatized the hell out of me. And I like to be traumatized in games, apparently, because it was a damn good journey.